President Trump says U.S. officials will head to Pakistan today for peace talks with Iran. But Iranian state media says Tehran is not planning to attend. Sources tell CBS News Vice President J.D. Vance, Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, and President Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner will travel to Islamabad for the negotiations. Yesterday on social media, President Trump said that if Tehran does not make a deal, the U.S. will, quote, knock out every single power plant and every single bridge in Iran, end quote. The fragile ceasefire is set to expire Wednesday. You've got a lot happening on the Strait of Hormuz over the weekend as well. Tehran is vowing to retaliate after U.S. forces seized an Iranian-flagged tanker on Sunday. The cargo ship was allegedly trying to get past the U.S. blockade of Iran's ports. U.S. Central Command posted this video of Marines landing on the vessel by helicopter. Now, one day earlier, Iran said the Strait of Hormuz was closed again. Throughout the weekend, Tehran fired at multiple ships in the waterway. Just take a quick listen here to what President Trump had to say on Saturday.
They wanted to close up the Strait again, as they've been doing for years, and they can't blackmail us.
Let's begin with CBS News White House reporter Aaron Navarro joining us from our D.C. bureau with the latest on all of this. Aaron, good morning to you. So what is the latest from the White House about this fresh round of talks? Either side appears to have different views.
Errol, we have not yet heard from the White House or President Trump since Iran has said publicly that they will not be attending these talks, or if the White House is still sending the vice president as well as the president's son-in-law Jared Kushner and special envoy Steve Witkoff. But over the weekend, the administration said that they are continuing ahead with their more immediate terms for a deal, which is Iran committing to not enrich uranium that could then be used to build a nuclear weapon and the full reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. Both are points that have not changed since the vice president's last time in Islamabad for direct negotiations that lasted 21 hours and resulted in no deal. But the White House is hoping that the gesture of sending the vice president again will show that the U.S. is taking these talks very seriously at this perilous moment of the ceasefire. Take a listen to U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations Mike Waltz on Face the Nation yesterday talk about this latest round of talks.
The Iranian side's in a bit of chaos. This is absolutely due to the devastating strikes on their leadership. But I think the vice president leading shows the level of engagement from the U.S. side, that we are absolutely serious. And I, for one, thank God for future generations that we are arresting a problem before it's too late. We're not waiting until the U.S. has no options and Iran has some kind of breakout, which would lead to a nuclear breakout all over the Middle East.
Waltz at the top of his answer there is referencing the public disagreements about the Strait of Hormuz between Iran's foreign minister Abbas Araghchi, who represented Iran in the last round of negotiations, and the force of Iran's armed forces, the IRGC. Should Tehran not accept the U.S.'s deal, President Trump last weekend has kept his threat open to strike Iran's bridges and power plants. And that ceasefire between the U.S. and Iran is set to end this Wednesday.
All right, Aaron, in our D.C. bureau, thank you for that. We now want to turn to CBS News senior foreign correspondent Imtiaz Tyab, who is joining us live right now from Islamabad in Pakistan. Imtiaz, phenomenal to have you there. But what are we hearing now from Iran about these potential peace talks where you are?
Errol, good to be with you. We were here in Islamabad just over a week ago when that marathon 21-hour session with Vice President J.D. Vance, the president's special envoys, and, of course, the Iranian delegation, where they talked and they talked and they talked, but did not come back with a deal. And here we are on the precipice of them returning here. But there's some jeopardy here following that U.S. strike on an Iranian vessel in the Strait of Hormuz, The Iranians are now signaling they may not come at all, suggesting that they basically have no plans to come. Now, it has to be said, Errol, leading up to negotiations like this, we've seen this consistently where both sides try to insert some sort of jeopardy in order to bring each other to the table and try to extract more concessions with each other. Still, this situation is very serious. And I just also want to say very quickly, we were in the Strait of Hormuz just over the weekend. We saw ship after ship just sitting there. And when you consider the fact that this is where 20% of the world's energy passes through, there are many countries around the world, not least the U.S. and Iran, who want to see it open. But these negotiations are incredibly tense if they happen.
Yeah, Imtiaz, you've had some strong reporting from the region. Our viewers should check that out, the reports you've been filing from the Strait over the weekend. But considering that this has always been a fragile ceasefire, could the U.S. seizure of an Iranian flag tanker impact the efforts to bring a war to an end, or is this what we expected to some degree?
You know, it's really hard to say. On the one hand, it's very clear both the U.S. and Iran want some sort of deal, want to see this war end. And yet there are other factions within Iran, especially, that don't want to see this war ending. Many hardliners within the Iranian leadership are bitterly opposed to any kind of negotiations with the U.S. They were incredibly upset at the talks that were held here just over a week ago, and they were incredibly angry when the Iranian foreign minister announced that the Strait had been opened following that ceasefire that was reached in Lebanon. And then, of course, him coming back with another comment following President Trump's statement that the part of the Strait that the U.S. is in would remain blockaded. All of this is to say that this is an incredibly fluid situation, and we have to see if those talks are even going to happen. Errol.
All right, Imtiaz, Tyab joining us from Islamabad, just past 4 in the afternoon there. Imtiaz, thank you.